Hello and welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. And may I just say,
You may say it, but I don't love it. I don't love it now. I didn't love it the million times it took place in the movie that we just watched. Okay, so it might be welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures, but Jim, I'm not okay with this. Okay, like I feel like this deserves some retribution. Okay, this is a plague on both our houses, as they say in Shakespeare. All right.
so the movie we watched this week is Three Ninjas. Now,
Why don't you tell us about the plot, Ben? Why don't you tell us about the plot, the amazing plot of Three Ninjas? Okay.
All right, I'll hit you with the stats and the plot. You ready? Three Ninjas, released in 1992, directed by, I think, a favorite of yours. And I always have a horrible time pronouncing his name.
He was young. It's John Turteltaub right now. He was very young when he directed this film. So I don't think we can hold this against him because he did do some superstar stuff in his, latter career. And yes, there's not a lot I can do with the fact that his name is on the film as director, as captain of the ninja ship. But
that's really well
continue,
done.
Ben.
There is a ship and ninjas in this movie. He directed Cool Runnings, National Treasure 1 and 2, and The Meg as just a small selection of films. Starring Victor Wong, the grandfather, Michael Trainer, Max Slade, and Chad Power as Rocky, Colt, and Tum Tum, respectively. Budget of 2.5 mil, domestically raked in 29 mil, and adjusted for inflation, that's 62 million as of this year, 2024. Now, Jim, you got to admit those are impressive numbers for a little plucky go-get-em film.
Stop it.
All right, plot of this film. Three grandchildren spend every summer with their grandfather learning ninja skills. At the end of this summer, they get their ninja names. Rocky, because he's steadfast and reliable. Colt, because he's fast and impulsive. And Tum Tum, because he's going to grow up to be a little fatty.
Can we just pause here? Can you explain the cultural significance, the supposed ninja names of Tum Tum and, Colt? Like, is that something?
I don't know if this is true, Jim, but I don't think this film is culturally or historically accurate.
You think?
Going out on a limb here. I don't think they did a lot of research on what ninjas are, other than the Ninja Turtles movie had just been released, and Home Alone's kind of cool. Let's make a Ninja Home Alone movie.
Yes, I wonder how we got here.
So every summer they go to their grandfather's who teaches them to be a ninja. At the end of this summer, a mysterious, shady businessman with connections to their grandfather comes and visits and says, "Hey, join me." We find out it's because his son-in-law, who hates him irrationally, mind you, is an FBI agent who's trying to crack down on his illegal organization. The kids go home. The dad's a jerk. He doesn't love him. He loves the FBI. And then their house gets invaded by, I have to say, idiots. And they fight them off. But then they get captured. And then they're on a ship. And then their grandfather, who looks like he can barely walk, kills and fights about 50 ninjas. And then they all fight ninjas and they light him up at the end. They hit the spots and they light him up. And that's the movie. Like, I know you guys think I'm missing some stuff, but I'm not.
I was actually, structurally, this movie irritated me. Now, it irritated me in a number of ways, Ben, okay? Not just structurally, but structurally, it also irritated me, okay? So basically, at a whopping 96 minutes, this movie is about 40 minutes longer than it needs to be. Okay, so
it's quick, it's flashy, it's over. I watched it twice.
Are you serious?
Well,
are you serious? Did you watch it twice?
As you're fond of bringing up, there is deleted scenes and a director's cut of this film. There's an international cut. There's an international cut of this film.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I watched the international cut because I did look up the differences between the two, and I'm fairly certain what I was watching was the international cut. So on, yeah, on an interesting platform, I'll say. But
Oh,
but
yeah,
look,
by the way,
so
this movie's so popular, we had to find it on YouTube. It's
yeah,
I got a
so
text from Jim in the
so
weekend. Hey man, where'd you watch this? I'm like, YouTube.
yeah. I was like, where on earth did you find it? Because I couldn't find this thing. So look, this movie, look, and I feel bad saying this with any film, particularly that involves child actors, right? This is no fault of the child actors. They're fine. Do you know what I mean? They're doing as instructed. They have fairly decent martial arts skills, which, you know, can't really be faked in some of those shots. So like that's all well and good. That's not why I don't like this movie. I don't like this movie because it's a bad movie. Okay. Like it's a movie that like it just has so many inconsistencies. It's you know, I was watching it and it's, you know how these days when you see a movie, they, you know, usually take great pains, even with a kids' movie, to make sure it operates on multiple levels. There are no levels to this movie. There is a 6-year-old level. Of if you are a 6-year-old, this movie is going to change your life, okay? And this will be the best thing that's ever happened to you. And then that's the end of the levels. Okay. There's no one above that who is going to enjoy the film if watching
I
it for the first time, not for nostalgia reasons. Okay. And I don't think there's, you know, many parents who would allow anyone younger than that to watch this film, or nor should they.
this
Because
movie
this
gives a
film is a
horrible
film
message in the
where
modern age. It's like,
it's like,
okay, so
at the end of the
I
day.
want some rebuttal. I want some rebuttal here. Okay. This movie has a
Oh,
love
right,
story.
right.
This movie is an action film. This movie is an international
Mhm.
crime thriller. This movie operates on so
Okay.
many levels that I think it's just gone straight over your head. Like classic lines like
Oh, right.
Rocky
Yeah, that's
loves Emily, Rocky loves Emily, Rocky loves Emily. I mean,
yeah.
you can't just make that magic happen. That's a recipe. It's years in the making. Look, no, you're 100% right with everything you've said. I want to say that off the bat here. There are some spectacular reasons for it, though. Well, not spectacular, but some good reasons for it. First of all, you're right. The kids are great at martial arts. The two oldest kids were basically scouted because of their martial arts skills. The oldest, Rocky, was found in his martial arts dojo. The middle child knew karate and taekwondo. The youngest, who has the coolest name, by the way, Chad Power, he didn't, but that's not why he was cast for that role. He was cast as the Michelangelo, the comedic relief. And this movie, best, at best, tells kids to defend themselves. At worst, it tells them to use their martial arts prowess to annihilate other school children.
Yes. That's yeah, hit the nail on the head, Ben. That's exactly what this film's about. Okay.
Yeah.
So can if that's your rebuttal, right?
Yep.
Did you feel, can I just say, right? Okay, we're doing this project, this podcast, this vodcast, if you will. Did you feel after you'd selected it and you know, loaded it up and you started to watch it, was this one where 15 minutes in you went, I've made a huge mistake? You know,
No,
was that, did that ever cross your mind? Like,
no, and I'll tell you why. Because I knew exactly what I was getting into when I picked this. Unlike the Phantom, where I'm like, this is going to be bad. Oh no, it's way worse than I remember. This is exactly as bad as I remember. The reason I chose this though was because I wanted to explore why did child Ben love this movie so much, and I have some reasons for it. And after watching it as an adult twice, I have some reasons why child Ben loved it. And I have reasons why probably multiple children and adults have nostalgia for this film. First of all, it's quick. For a child, it's a quick movie. right? It is in and out. There is no really kind of weird chunky bits between scenes. It's set piece to set piece to set piece to set piece. Second reason, it's a power fantasy, right? It's a child's power fantasy. The whole idea of Home Alone, the whole idea of this movie is I'm a kid and I'm getting one up on crazy adults and I'm a hero because I have a special skill, right? There's an attractive nature to that to a child who wants to feel special, who wants to see children get one up on adults, right? And lastly, it is, I think, the Home Alone and Ninja Turtles factor, right? It's hard to identify with a Ninja Turtle. They're cool and they're radical and cowabunga, but it's much easier to identify with three boys because I was also a little boy. As I said when I announced this movie last podcast, there was a period of time where there was like this movie, there was another movie called The Big Green, and like Star Wars were on rotation for me. And I owned Star Wars. I didn't have to hire that, but The Big Green and Three Ninjas I would hire repeatedly. I hired their sequels as well. And I've got a little bit of interesting facts about their sequels, but yeah, I wanted to see how that stacked up. Adult Ben, this movie's hot trash. Like hot trash. Like it is horribly cynically made to cash in on children, and any parent who sat through this with their child was begging for this movie to finish. Guaranteed.
Yeah. And what you're saying, I get it. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of what I said as well, in the sense that like this movie is just for kids. Like, you know, it's purely and squarely targeted at children. They're not interested in capturing mom and dad. They're not interested in capturing older brothers and sisters. It's like, this is just for the kid. And I suppose if we were to be brutally honest and say, you know what? They made a movie for kids and kids loved it. You know, it's kind of mission accomplished, right? So it's sort of in some sense, it's like, what are you complaining about? And ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm complaining because, Ben, you made me watch it and I'm not a kid. All right. I am an adult and I expect a little more out of my cinematic experiences to stay stimulated mentally.
As a person who studies cinema, as a person who immersed themselves in movie culture, is it not important to understand where we've come from to where we are now? Because yes, this movie was released in an era where they hadn't worked it out, or they didn't care. No, sorry, they didn't care about engaging multiple audiences and providing kids stories of substance. They didn't care. This is junk food of a movie. It is to be consumed. It is no nourishing factors whatsoever. And then it's to be consumed again because it was so quick to eat the first time.
Yeah, it is definitely. Look, but okay, so something. Let's get onto some other things that annoyed me about this movie. There are a couple of choices in this movie that are probably like 10% off genius. Okay, but it's the 10%, which is just such a crucial thing, which means really it's hurts. A swing and a miss, right? So now you say this movie is the pastiche, if you like, of films that had come just before it. And the other film that had come just before it, which it's also definitely a pastiche of, is one we watched recently, which is Bill and Ted. Okay, so the villains or the goons in this movie are quite clearly, and I say this with no research whatsoever, but seriously, I'd put money on this if I was a betting person. But like, honestly, they're so seriously rip-offs of Bill and Ted that it's just not funny. It's literally like, wow, they could have gotten sued for that. Like, that is quite clearly like, you know, the inflection of the characters, the word choices. You know, basically, I feel like the direction to these three actors was play it like Bill and Ted. So these are the goons, that is. Now, when I say it's 10% off genius, had they actually been able to cast Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter in these roles, you move from swing and a miss to cinematic meta genius, right? And for the kids, makes no difference. right? The kids don't. It doesn't make a difference to them who plays these roles, but it would have certainly brought some joy to me because I was like, that was so close. Do you know what I mean?
All right,
And
so
it just would have given us a little something.
I have two facts about the villains. So yes, the three villains we're talking about, the lead villain's name is Fester, and they're surfer dudes. They're nephews of like the right-hand man of the bad guy, right? And they get sent because the bad guys can't be seen because the FBI is watching the house. The lead bad guy, Fester. Now, I'm not sure if you'll recognize him, but I recognize him because I have a father who's obsessed with the TV show Jag. He was he's Bud from Jag.
For Patrick anyone who is
only...
So that little sound I just made with my mouth, for anyone who's just listening to this and not watching as well, was my brain exploding. Okay, because I was watching this going, I know him, and I was like, where do I know him from? And you're absolutely right. It's Jag. Okay, so
it's the TV show Jag. Now, if there's a younger audience to this, you've never seen it because it used to be like a daytime television, early afternoon television show when I was a teenager and a kid, and my dad was obsessed with it too.
It was for us, but it was actually, in fairness, a primetime show.
Primetime,
do you know what I mean? That we just got late. Do you know what I mean? Because we lived in Australia and they didn't used to care about us in a global marketplace.
The other little tidbit I have about the villains in this is one of them isn't an actor. I don't have the note here. I think it was the long-haired one. He was actually one of the cameramen for this movie. The third dude dropped out of this film. And instead of recasting, the cameraman's like, I could do this. And they're like, really? He goes, yeah, just put me in a scene. I could do this. And he did it. And then he switched between acting and then filming the rest of the movie. I love that.
That's hilarious.
So close, but so far.
If we have a look at this film has got three distinct parts, right? So we have the opening where we're training with the grandfather. And then we have a little piece, which is sort of a bridge between parts where we're back in the burbs and we go to school for a little excursion. Then we're in the home invasion, which is the entire middle portion of the film up to the end of the second act. And then the final act of the film, which is the Home Alone portion. And then the final act of the film, we're on the ship, right? And I was just like, the movie does just swing from one thing to another thing to another thing. Like, it doesn't feel particularly connected together. It's like almost 3 episodes of something that are then kind of, it's almost, it's literally like 3 episodes of a Three Ninjas show. You know, it's not a massive sort of feeling of connectivity. One of the only things that I was watching it and I was like, I respect that, was when they decided to set so much of it inside a suburban house. I was like, well, at least that's cheap, right? That's smart. That's cheap, right? That's not it. That's gonna, that's efficient. That's economizing. Do you know what I mean? I was watching it going. The other thing that's hilarious to me, and it was quite clear from the start, as soon as you see the size of the bedroom that the boys have, right? The boys have the biggest bedroom in the history of, suburban bedrooms. As soon as I saw that, I was like, there's going to be a fight scene in here, because it's literally like it's the most oversized Friends apartment style bedroom you've ever seen in your life, with all this weird stuff in it.
The house makes no sense. Like, if you look at it, because we really only see like the kitchen, a little bit of the living room, and their bedroom. But on the outside, this house is huge. There's no way that house does not have enough rooms for all 3 of those kids to have their own bedroom. Yet they all share this one massive room that has a walkie-talkie to a girl down the street, and
which makes no sense. Stuff. The walkie-talkie makes no sense. There's 0 electronics in that. There's not even string attached to the tin that they're supposed to be using.
They both have magical ninja cans.
I was like, what is happening to this? How is this? possibly supposed to work?
So I had a realization that in the early 90s to mid 90s, Hollywood believed that every child under the age of 16 was an engineering genius. Like this whole idea that they could so quickly come up with booby traps and so quickly come up with solutions. Like the answer in this is their grandfather trained them to be ninjas, and ninjas use what's available to them, right? But like the idea that they trick them into drinking a laxative, they have like pepper bombs on them, all this sort of stuff, is wild. Also, I don't know if you know this, Tum Tum, there's no deaths in this film, but he has the highest kill count in this film as far as like defeats. He defeats two of the main three villains, and he also like he does the finishing blow on so many people that his brothers have just beaten up. It's like they do the hard work, and then he walks along and goes pop, pop, hiya, hiya. Also, they do say hiya about 50 billion times in this movie, and I think it's to cover up that they're not actually hitting people.
Yeah.
So
Ben, I didn't like this movie. I didn't like it.
So there are deleted scenes in this movie, and there is an international cut. Now, the reason it was cut down originally was to fit within a PG rating in the United States, right? So there were like basically more fight or extended fights cut out of this film and things like that. But there was one major story element that was changed, and I was wondering if you'd seen this version of the film. Ready? In the original release version of the film, when they're playing basketball with the kids, did they win the basketball game? In your version?
Yeah, I don't think they did. Like because when I was like looking up, when I was looking up whether I'd seen the international or the original, I kind of realized, well, the version I saw, they didn't beat the bullies, and then they went back later and, did. So, I'm pretty sure that's meant I was watching the international version, right?
It does.
So, because that had that stuff.
Yeah, it 100% does.
But I don't think that makes the film better.
No, it just makes it different. It sends a different message at the end of the film, right? So, because in the original release of the film, they actually win the game and they get their bikes back there and then. But in the international, they lose the basketball game, they lose their bikes, and they only get their bikes right at the end of the film where they then beat up their bullies. Beat up's a strong word, but they defeat their bullies and take their bikes back.
Well, no, they beat them up. They beat them up. Okay, that's exactly what happens there. These older kids who, yes, aren't very nice, get beaten up by the three ninjas.
So I also want to, because I don't think you'll ever let me pick the sequels. I think you might just straight up veto them, which we've never discussed veto powers in this podcast. But I do want to briefly discuss.
We need some veto powers because, like the sequels to this movie do not get better, right?
Oh, this is the highest rated one. So the sequels, though, there is some interesting tidbits about them. So the release order of these films is, hang on, I want to get this right because I keep confusing myself.
I actually know this because
so three ninjas. Yeah, go.
I was like kind of flabbergasted by how this turned out. Like, this was the most interesting part of this entire endeavor for me, Ben, was actually looking at the sequel shenanigans here. So, because they shot Three Ninjas and Three Ninjas Knuckle Up back to back with different directors, mind you, which is interesting, but they shot them back to back with the same actors. But they, due to distribution issues, which I can only imagine is the fact that this franchise, if you like, if we must call it a franchise, started out...
franchise, 4 films.
Yeah, I know, but but it started out as a Touchstone Pictures, which was an offshoot of Disney, and then the sequels all transitioned to TriStar, which is an offshoot of Sony. So, kind of like I'm looking at it, and it said distribution issues. I'm guessing the distribution issues were the fact that Disney or Touchstone dropped the property after the first movie, and then TriStar picked it up, and there was some negotiations about the film that they already had in the can. And while they were doing that, they instead, to get something out quickly, shot a second sequel called Three Ninjas Kick Back. But at that time, some of the actors had become, because they weren't actors, they were martial arts kids, right? Had become kind of not really interested in continuing as much, and so they did some recasting there. So you have this situation where the release order, chronologically it's wrong, the narrative's wrong, but then also the casting is completely mucked up, because what we got was Three Ninjas, then we got Three Ninjas Kick Back with a basically brand new cast except for Colt.
Yeah.
And then we get Three Ninjas Knuckle Up, which is, functionally the original cast back again because they shot it ages ago. It's just the worst. It's just.
So the kid who played Tum Tum was filming something else when they went to do that third one that was the middle one. The older one didn't want to be an actor anymore, and the only one they could get back was Colt. Of the four movies, because there was a fourth released kind of years afterwards, all the kids are kind of aged out, so they couldn't replay their roles. The only kind of guy who's in all four of them is Victor Wong, who plays the grandfather. And the High Noon movie was his last film. Like, his last film was a Three Ninjas movie. And that guy was in Oscar-winning, films and stuff like that. But it's this kind of wild... I always find it really interesting looking behind the scenes in Hollywood, because we're starting to live in the age where, films are getting written off for tax purposes and never released a lot more than they used to. Distribution is really kind of a lot more... not complicated, but there's a lot more moving parts to it. People are selling and trading distribution a lot more than they used to, because it used to be like the few big studios with their offshoots, and that was it. But now you've got streaming services, you've got the production companies, you've got massive TV productions now, companies as well, and networks and things like that. And it's interesting to see this stuff existed back then, this weirdness, but it's just so much more crazy now.
Well, it's also the other big change, is marketing has become so much more expensive. So, marketing now is sometimes half the budget of the film itself. So if there's any doubt at all that the film might not go, they've got a real do we invest now an extra half again to actually get this thing out there? But yes,
back in the day, it was what, a trailer, a TV spot, and maybe a fast food tie-in.
Yeah, and it's because, and there was obviously a print campaign, but the fact is, it was a much less crowded marketplace. That they just didn't have to worry in the same way that their product may not be seen if they didn't do a gigantic marketing push. In the same way that they do now, because you've really got to tell audiences what your product is and where they can see it, and you have to really put it in their face, otherwise it's just not going to happen. But look, so Three Ninjas happened.
I got one more wild fact. And it's not about this movie, it's about the second. Knuckle Up or Kick Back, one of the two, whatever.
Well, it depends what you're calling the second, really.
The second one in chronological order.
Right, that's Knuckle Up.
Knuckle Up. It was directed by a guy called Shin Sang-ok, who was a Korean director. This guy should have made a movie about himself rather than this. He was a director in Korea, in Japan-occupied Korea, back in the late 1950s, right? And he was making films and all that sort of stuff, and then Korea split. Then him and his wife were kidnapped by North Korea, re-educated, and got to make films for the Kim Jong-il. Propaganda films. He eventually escaped at a film premiere in Vienna, went to the United States, and the first American film he made was Three Ninjas Knuckle Up. That dude has lived a life that led him to Three Ninjas.
That's pretty amazing, actually.
That's wild, right? This dude is like a living cinematic legend. Like, people knew who he were. He was an inspiration for people. Still is, right? And, like, yeah, it's just, like, yeah, so he actually directed it under a pseudonym of Simon Sheen. Like, it was just, I think someone was just giving him work, to be honest, because he was new in the States and had escaped and all that sort of stuff. And he was like an executive producer on the other two films as well. Like, but yeah, I just wanted to point out, like, I found this dude, like, I found a super interesting human in this, and I will continue to read up on him because there's a biography and stuff as well, which I'm
really,
I'm going to source at this point because this dude seems crazy interesting. Like, him and his wife went through stuff you see in James Bond films, like, and I'm not even a fan of James Bond films, but this is real life. So, but yeah, so I wanted to point out that yes, Three Ninjas and its subsequent films are not good, but there's interesting stuff about them.
Honestly, look, and look, I don't do this, but I did a little bit of phone research as I was watching, Ben, because that was my level of
the only way you could stay engaged
of interest. And I was like, what? The sequels were shot out of order? What? The cast completely changed up? That's super interesting. Oh, they're still in the house. Now they're throwing teapots at him. Okay, fantastic. Is that a CD? No, that's a Ninja Star. No, that's a CD that's supposed to be a Ninja Star. Okay, wonderful. So
oh, the CDs. CDs made no sense.
Yeah, look, you know, but again, on its own terms, as a film for children, you know, as an early 90s product, there is no problem here. This movie did its job as intended and made a generation of children happy. I just wasn't one of them, so I received zero nostalgia kickback from being forced to watch this week, Ben.
So, Jim, how am I to be punished?
You're not going to be punished. Speaking of re-education, okay, we're going to...
Sounds like it's not like I'm angry at you. It's like I'm disappointed and we're going to fix this.
That's exactly what it is. I'm like, okay, well, I require a palate cleanser. Okay, I need now to watch something that is known to be good. You know, and is going to take me to a more cinematic, happy place. So we are going to watch the Ridley Scott epic Russell Crowe Gladiator.
That movie is so cool.
Isn't it?
Like,
isn't it?
I love that movie because of how historically inaccurate it is. And I go, that didn't happen. That couldn't happen. That wasn't there. Oh, he murdered that guy. That's awesome. So I am very much looking forward to this film.
Good. I'm glad. And I'm looking forward to it too. And anyone who is still watching or listening, it's not all Three Ninjas. You know, there's a little bit of Gladiator on the horizon as well.
I have, no spoilers here, I have a movie that I've just discovered that I'm waiting for a while before I drop because I know you're going to hate it. But as I said, there's going to be a gap. But I want to see it, and I'm not going to watch it until we watch it together. I want to see it more than anything in the world.
I feel like you enjoy the most my vitriolic reactions on these podcasts, and I would not be surprised if you are perhaps strategizing ways to bring that side out of me more, because some of these choices, Ben, I'm like, this is punishment now. Like,
as I said, I've learned my lesson. There's going to be a gap because I can only push a man too far before he breaks. So there's going to be a gap. But hey, I'm excited. Gladiator, Russell Crowe, Ridley Scott, Tony Scott, Ridley Scott.
It's Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott. It is just a spectacular film. So, thank you for listening this week. You got anything before we wrap up, Jim?
Nah, just tell them where to find us, bro.
You can find us in a few places. The first is our YouTube channel, Jim and Ben Adventures, Movie Adventures. The second place is Spotify and Apple iTunes, same, Jim and Ben Movie Adventures. And last but not least, you can find us on Instagram under Jim and Ben Adventures. Please comment, subscribe, leave us a review. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Let us know if there's any films you'd love us to watch. Let us know if there's any films you think Jim would hate that we should watch, because I'm on board. I'm with you, solo listener. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. This has been Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. I have been Ben.
And I have been Jim. I will see you for Roman shenanigans. Bye-bye.